Welcome to the Harmony Channel, and boy, do I have a conversation for you and us today. We're going to talk about the 917 Society, and we're going to talk about the U.S. Constitution and the importance of the U.S. Constitution. And I'm so honored to be joined by Joni Bryan, the founder of the 917 Society, and she's got an amazing story about why she started this, how she started this. This is a story about the power of one motivated woman. This isn't a story about a bunch of donors, a bunch of millionaires backing someone or funding something. This is about an ordinary American citizen motivated by God and her belief in this country to change the culture in this country and to give people a proper understanding of this country's founding and why we should take a lot of pride, satisfaction in being Americans. They pass out U.S. constitutions all over America. They passed out more than 1 million last year. But Joni is joined by Mark Moore, who's on their advisory board for the 917 Society, and Roger McCalman, who is a supporter and I think on the board as well. But he also has an incredible resemblance to arguably our greatest president, certainly in the top two, he and George Washington. We'll see if Trump cracks the top two, but it looks a lot like Abe Lincoln. And I'm just honored to have all you guys. Joni, I'm gonna start with you. How long ago did you start the 917 Society, and kind of walk us through what inspired you to do it?
Well, I started it. I was working just up the road here at a retirement community. And one of the residents that worked there, that lived there, he had ran for governor in the 60s. And he'd been involved in the civil rights movement and some different things. And he was a constitutional lawyer. And he loved to debate court cases. And so we were debating a court case one day. And he said to me, "My dear, you realize that's unconstitutional?" And I said, "It is." And he said, "Yes." And he pulled a pocket constitution out of his pocket, just like the ones we give the kids. And he said to me, "My dear, when is the last time you read your Constitution?" And when he said that, I realized I had never read it, ever. And I couldn't understand why, because my degree's in biology and chemistry. I was going to go to medical school, and then I ended up getting married to a public school teacher, and I became a social worker. But I'd always voted. But I never had read the Constitution. I couldn't even remember. 8th grade, Mrs. Alexander, I had a little bit of Bill of Rights, and that was it. And that's all I could remember. And I thought, wow, is it just me? So I thought maybe it was just me. But I always taught my kids, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And here I was looking at myself, I'm part of the problem. And I thought, well, and so I started asking everyone, and this is a funny story, but I had started Uber driving to make extra money. And so I would put little pocket constitutions in my car, and as I would drive around Nashville, I would give out constitutions and start conversations. And so I learned that nobody's read the Constitution. And they were like looking at it, like, what is this thing, And so that's really where I did my survey, was in Uber, driving around Nashville. It was a lot of fun at 2 a.m. when I was picking up people downtown. They'd be thinking like, Dolly Parton's picking them up. So I had a lot of fun with that one. But, so I knew that we had a serious problem in this country, and I started researching about the Constitution. Of course, started reading it myself, and I started changing my ideas, because I had spent so many years in social work, and I had been around policy. I dealt with, public policy and all that, but I really didn't connect what was happening in Washington with what was happening in my very state. And 90% of our voters don't connect the two. They just don't. They vote, but they really don't connect the impact. And so that's when I learned about the federal mandate that all schools that get federal funds, K through 12, all universities, and all federal employees are supposed to have a program on the Constitution on around September 17th.
So every school is supposed to. How many of them do you think do it?
Almost none.
And the thing, and I don't want to insinuate that you hadn't in real time back then thought this all the way through, but when you look out at the issues we're having in this country, it comes from a fundamental lack of understanding of our Constitution. And so when I was talking to you last week about having you come on the show, I thought about, I'm from the sports world, and I thought about you guys made Vince Lombardi, the legendary football coach for the Green Bay Packers. And so the Packers hired Vince Lombardi from the Washington Redskins in the early 1960s, maybe late 1950s. I think mid-early 1960s. But his first practice with Green Bay, that was a terrible franchise, and he was brought in to save it. And he started the practice out, and he held up a football. And he said, guys, this is a football. And he's like, because we got to start at ground zero. We got to start at the very beginning, the fundamental. And basically that's what you have identified that's missing in our culture.
Absolutely.
It's like, we don't this is a football. This is the Constitution. Everything we're doing here is based on this. And so the lack of appreciation that we have for the uniqueness of our Constitution, its connection to the Bible and a biblical worldview, how our entire system of government was written by men that were going to the Bible and saying, okay, how can we incorporate this into our and it all makes, then you start to understand, well, how did we become the greatest country in the world? We started with a biblical foundation.
Absolutely, we did. And, now there's all this talk about separation of church and state, but that's not in the Constitution. And that came about later through a Supreme Court interpretation. But our founders were grounded in the Bible, and everything they did, was around the Bible. And so there are actual phrases in our Constitution that come straight from the Bible if you look at verses, So our biblical influence is so important. And so when I started the 917 Society, I wanted it to be something that honored and celebrated our Constitution. And that's why I chose 917, because that's the date. September 17th of 1787, our Constitution was signed into law. And so I wanted to keep it very simple and just make sure that we honor and celebrate the day. But most people don't know, it goes back to 1959. This is how long. In 1959, Citizenship Day was passed, and that was actually Constitution Day. It was when all schools were supposed to honor and celebrate it. So it goes way, way back that we've been ignoring it. But in 2004, it changed to Constitution Day by George W. Bush. He changed it and made it a federal mandate, that universities, all schools K through 12, and all federal employees, and it's a lot of fun when I go ship constitutions out at the post office. I say, what do y'all do for Constitution Day? And they just look at me, because federal employees aren't doing anything. Nobody's doing anything about it when they're all supposed to. So raising awareness is the first thing, and making sure that our Constitution has a place of honor and respect. And one of the reasons I wanted to print it, because when he handed me that Constitution, he put that in my hand, and he said, when is the last time you read your Constitution? I never thought of it as mine. It was just the Constitution. But when he did that, it became real and tangible, and it was mine. This was mine. And so at the event the other night I had to bring up something that happened to me, and it brought tears to my eyes. But, I've had people say, oh, you don't need to print constitutions, just do it online. And I've always known, God led me to do this, and I was supposed to print them and give them to the kids. And so we've been doing this here in Tennessee for several years now, for probably about 8. And
this started 8 years ago.
We didn't get our first distribution out till 2016 because I got sidetracked. I had a health issue for about a year and a half, and then once I knew I was going to be okay, I had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I still have that, but I'm still here too. So God has been very merciful and very good to me, and so I knew when I was going to be okay, this was what He had for me to do. This was my calling. That no matter what, He would just have to lead me in the right direction, because I had no clue what I was doing. But I just knew I had to do it, and there was just no turning back. And so He has blessed me with so many wonderful people that have joined into this, mission and this cause, to make sure our kids honor and celebrate Constitution Day.
I want you, I think you're comfortable being this transparent, is walk the audience through just like your personal situation, because I think it's important for them to hear that you don't have to be some big, powerful, rich person backed by everybody on the planet in order to have an impact in this country. you know.
Oh, I don't mind telling it all.
Yeah.
When I first started the project, I was newly divorced. I had no money. I was working 14-hour days in a kitchen, actually. I was a pastry chef up here at Park Manor. And I was the last person on earth that should be doing this because I had nothing, and I was just trying to survive. And so when he laid it on my heart, I thought, how am I going to do this? And I even went to see a U.S. rep, a congressman who had an office a block from where I lived. And I thought, I've got to do this, but I don't know how. So I went to talk to him. I thought, oh, he's going to be so excited about this project. He'll help guide me in what direction I need to go. And so I was so full of hope, and I was going to see him thinking he's going to really help me get connected because I had none. And you know what he said to me? He said, Miss Bryan, he said, he was another tall guy. All the guys are tall. He said, nobody cares about the Constitution. And I left there, and I was in tears because I thought, how am I supposed to do this? I have no money. I needed constitutions. I couldn't even buy constitutions at that point. And I thought, what am I going to do? And I was walking down the sidewalk, and I smelled like onions and cookies because I'd been cooking, And so I thought, I can't do this. And I was just, had tears. I remember that. And then I just got mad. I started thinking about how many hours I work a day. And my tax money is going to pay his salary. And I had told him, I said, you're not upholding your oath of the Constitution. You're supposed to uphold the Constitution. And he started him-hawing around, So I left there pretty fed up at that moment. And then I thought, I can use this to either get busy or give up. And I just couldn't give up. God wasn't going to let me give up. So I got mad, and I said, I'm going to show him. And that's what we've done, all of us together, is we've shown him that people do care. People care about the Constitution. They care about this country. They care about God. And we've seen that just in the last election with everything changing. But now's not the time to slow down. We've got to work. A lot of work to do, repairing a lot of the damage in the past that's been done by just ignorance, I guess you would call it, just being ignorant of the situation. And so now that we know, it's time we get busy and do something about it.
Joni, walk us through the growth that you've seen in your organization and in your ability to get these constitutions in the hands of young people.
Well, our first year, we were, when I started, I was just trying to get anyone to listen to me, anyone. And I was talking to everybody. And so our first year, we were able to get some of our legislators involved, which I was very thankful for, our local ones. And so we gave out $25,000 in Middle Tennessee, just in the middle area here. I literally had a little Chevy Cruze. I would drive around. And for those that are Southern, I looked like a bootlegger, because I had 30-pound boxes, in the back of my car. And we would go around, and I would deliver them to the schools. Well, every year we've increased. We've given more. Second year, 50,000, then 100. Then we started getting other states saying, we want this program. And so it's just been amazing how God has just opened doors, because I promised him when I started this, I said, if you'll just open the doors, I'll walk through it. And he has. He has. And it's not always been easy, but he's answered our prayers for things we needed. 2 years ago, my car was at its last. It was like, we're going to have a new engine. I mean, it's really bad. And we had some of our donors called us and said, God told us you need an SUV. Nobody had been told that. And they called us and said, he told us you need an SUV. And they bought us an SUV. And that's what I'm driving out here today, is that little black SUV. I mean, God has just opened the doors. When I didn't think anything could change or happen, he has always come through. And, I know that we're doing the right thing. But it's been a blessing, because every year we've increased and done more. But the story I was going to mention was, people wonder, are you making an impact? Are you making a difference? And I told the story at our event about, the little boy on the beach with his dad, and there's all the starfish washed up, and the little boy picks them up and throws one back, and the dad says, you can't make a difference. And he picked another one up, and he said, but I did to that one. And so that happened to me this last year. I had stopped at Starbucks. I'm not a coffee drinker, I'm a tea drinker. And so I had stopped in Starbucks, and the one in Bellevue had changed to just all delivery, either drive-through or delivery. And I was in there, and I always wear this pen everywhere I go. And a young man came running in there with a backpack on to grab his coffee. And he saw my pen, and he said, 917. And he pulled the Constitution out of his backpack. And he said, I got this one in 8th grade, and I've been carrying this around. He said, I carry it everywhere I go. And it made me, I was just shocked, because I wasn't expecting that. And it just brought tears to my eyes because I thought, yes, we are making a difference. It made a difference to that person.
Mark, when did you get connected to 917 and any reaction you had with it, just how powerful what Joni has started and just, I don't know, you're an inspiration.
Yeah, so actually, prior to ever really knowing Joni, I was the chairman for the Cheatham County Republican Party, and somebody said, you really should have 917 come speak at your event or at your monthly meetings. And so I had Joni come, and we met. That was, I think, probably one of the first times we had ever met. And I actually got to hear her whole deal. I didn't really know anything about the organization at that time, and got to hear the whole, pretty much what she had just said. And I was like, man, this is what we're missing, not only in Tennessee, but in America. And you realize, like, her story is, no matter who you are, you can make a difference. You just have to try. And it doesn't matter if you're at the lowest level or you're the billionaire, you really can make a difference. You just have to try. And I mean, it's a testament to her story, from starting with nothing to the organization that it is today. I mean, we had over 500 people at the event the other day.
We keep referencing the event.
Yes.
Tell us about the events you put together, and that's kind of how you guys got on my radar, because you had Tucker Carlson in town, and Kevin Donahue, that's on my show with me a lot, told me about it. But and do me a favor, a little bit more uncomfortable on it. There you go. Tell me a little bit about how you put that event together and what it was.
Yeah, so they do an event every year in the spring as well as in the fall. The fall event's typically more of just a hangout, get-together event, and it's right around the 9/17 date. We try to do it always on the date of 9/17 every year. And but this year we were wanting to really get the message out there, get the awareness of who the organization is. So we reached out to Tucker Carlson, and he was gracious enough to come and be part of the event, and has really exposed the organization on a broader audience, which I think is what we've been missing and needing for so long. And so, at the event we had over 500 people in attendance. I think the closest event maybe a couple hundred people.
Right.
So it really brought in new people, and I think Kevin, he had never heard of 917. I think half of our audience,
Half of them
had never heard of the group. So it was great to have somebody like Tucker be there, which allowed us to reach a broad audience that had never heard about the mission and the objective of the organization. So it was huge for us.
Now, I'm going a little bit off. Roger, was this in your barn or?
Yeah. Yes, it was.
So tell me about your involvement with 917, and just, have you always been doing this Abe Lincoln? I wish you had brought your hat today. I was looking forward to your hat, but you really don't need it because you actually look like Abe Lincoln.
Well, I was at an event with Senator Jack Johnson, and I got approached by some blonde-headed lady who said, "Could you be Lincoln for me?"
Really? Is it?
Yeah. And so I said, "What do you do?" She said, "Well, we get constitutions to kids, and we could sure use a Lincoln." And I said, "Okay." So that was our journey at beginning. But it's evolved into more, and you don't mind if I have some liberty here.
Please.
Is that...
You're the president.
That's right. You're the president.
The Constitution is simply a document if we don't understand why we have it. Mm-hmm. It's a piece of paper. And that's the way it's being delivered now. It's just a document. But that's not what our founding fathers meant it to be. They meant it to be the heartbeat of America. The thing that bonds us and makes us all one, no matter who we are in this country. It makes us one nation. But it also keeps God in the forefront. Mm-hmm. And what I saw as, well, especially when Joni was just talking, was America's been disassembling valuable parts of our nation. Constitution is one of them. I heard Joe Biden put the Constitution down as not being a document, but a living and breathing document that's up for change. He doesn't see it as the value that it is. And the problem is that in the 60s, Christianity was being removed. It was being taken away from us. Part of the Christianity is part of our Constitution. Our Constitution is built on biblical principles. And if we take out the Bible, then obviously we got to get rid of the Constitution, because the Constitution says we are what? We are free. We have freedom of choice, freedom of speech. We have the right to bear arms. There's more to it than that. And then what's happening that I saw is that, and this happened at our event, is I was in the back getting ready to come out, and I was having a conversation with God. And God said, when you go out there, you thank me first. You bring me to the light first. And the Bible tells us God's a jealous God, and he is a jealous God. He created me, he created everybody in this room. And he gave us an opportunity, because of his son, Jesus Christ, to have even a greater freedom than the Constitution will ever give us. And so when I came out, that's exactly what I did. I gave God glory, because that's who we need to give glory to. If you want to find out what's happening to the Constitution, watch who says God's name and who lives God's name. Do you know when God looks at you or me, do you know what he's looking for inside us? He's not looking for Roger. He's not looking for Jason. He's looking for Jesus inside us. In that Constitution is Jesus. We just have to keep Jesus in the forefront of that Constitution to keep it alive. In our Bible is Jesus. And if we don't keep God first, our nation will never, ever, ever sustain itself. It will crumble. God created America for a reason. He took the gospel from America to the world. And now America needs missionaries to come to us. There's something wrong with America. There's something wrong when America doesn't acknowledge God. I watched Trump acknowledge God, which how many presidents do that anymore? And I was concerned, and I'll be quite frank, when our last administration was in, I was watching our nation crumble, and I was wondering, will this Constitution survive? Mm-hmm. I have 16 grandkids and 4 great-grandkids. I have over 850 historical books that I've gone through, bits and pieces, trying to find history. And I listen to my kids, my grandkids tell history, and it's not the history that I learned. Mm. And it scared me, because the nation that I grew up in was a free country. Mm-hmm. The nation that I grew up in didn't have, that I grew up in, I didn't have prejudice against a black person or a brown person or a yellow person. I couldn't, because I'm a mutt. I've got every race in my body right now. And so I couldn't have a value in being a racist or prejudiced against anybody.
More than that, you're a Christian, and it doesn't
and
allow
a Christian doesn't allow it. It doesn't, because to be Christ-like doesn't allow it. When I pastored a church, I asked my church, what color is God? Nobody could answer. I said, he's the essence of all color, yet he's the absence of all color. He's the most balanced truth you'll ever find. He's the truest of true. He's the faithful of faithfuls. He's the just of just. I don't ever want to lose that relationship with God. And now anything I do, to be quite honest, it's God first, God first, God first. And that's the way it is. Mm-hmm. The Constitution is second to God. It's not the first thing I read. I read my Bible, I read my word. The Constitution to me is an extension of that to this nation. It's a promise in there, a promise that God made in his word to his people. And the founding fathers knew, because they'd been around tyrannical people to know that that is the only thing that will preserve America other than God. That's the only thing. Once we lose that, we lose our freedom. If you listen to the news, they always say that we're a, what do they call us? What kind of nation are we? We're not a conservative nation. We are a...
Judeo-Christian?
No, they... gosh, I hate this when your brain goes dead, huh? But... we're
a constitutional republic.
We're a constitutional republic, but what do they say we are?
Democracy.
A what?
A democracy.
They say the word democracy. Even on Fox News, I hear them say
Yeah.
this.
We're not.
I sit there and my flesh gets to curling because I go, did you not go to school? Do you know the difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic? They look identical. It's like counterfeit money over here. But when you vote into a democracy, you gave your power to them to lead you. Under a constitutional republic, the power remains in the hands of the people. That's why we have the Constitution. That's why we have the Declaration of Independence. It says we the people, not we the politicians, we the government. And I think government needs to be shaken out, cleaned out, both Republican and Democrat. I don't care. Because I think that they've sold out to a product rather than to what that says and preserve America. When they have goals of their own, when a politician goes in and he's making $100,000 a year and he leaves and he's worth $40 billion or $40 million, it doesn't matter. Where did he get $40 million?
Exactly.
Tell me that. Because it didn't come from right doing. When they do insider trading, I'm getting political, but when they do insider trading, they are robbing the people of the rights that they can't do that. There's no way I can go and do insider trading. I'd worked for a big company, a multi-billion-dollar company, and my name was on there. If I said anything outside of line, I could go to prison for doing insider trading. I would never violate that because I don't have a right to do that. And neither do they have a right to go in and do insider trading. They make bills to suppress people rather than bills that are level across the board. If you're a congressman, a senator, a president, a governor, you're under the same laws of the Constitution and this government as we are, and you should not ever be over that.
Roger, I'm very comfortable with where you're going, but I do want to tap into your biblical worldview and the fact that you were
Cool.
a minister. So I want to drive you back a little bit.
That's good.
Because what I hear from the people that clearly want to uproot the Constitution, want to rewrite the Constitution, they're making the argument that, hey, there were no people that looked like me that wrote the Constitution. I wasn't allowed to blah, blah, blah. And when I hear those types of arguments, I go, okay, you're telling on yourself, particularly if you're claiming a Christian faith, you don't believe in miracles. And trust me, our Constitution is a miracle.
It is a miracle.
A group of very flawed men got biblically inspired for a time period and wrote the greatest Constitution in the history of the planet. That's a miracle. And people need to understand, it's like, yes, they were flawed. Yes, they made mistakes. Yes, some of them owned slaves and all that. But if you understand the Bible and you believe in miracles. You know that Paul was a murderer, and you know that Moses and all these people, you believe, and so we've convinced ourselves, that those men weren't capable of a miracle. Well, have you read your Bible?
Well, in that, what's happened is, I believe professors have broadcasted a lie of those men. For instance, they're imperfect people. You and I are imperfect.
Everyone.
I'm flawed. I've done stupid things my whole life. If I were to run for president, they'd probably pull everything out they could and shake it out for everybody to see. But the thing is that they don't understand. They don't understand the grace of God. That has the grace of God in it. That Constitution has the grace of God. It's delivered well. They did a great job of delivering that. They knew they were men with flaws. They knew they were imperfect. They knew they came from backgrounds that were not always right. But they wrote something to preserve the safety and the sanctity of this nation and the people who live in it, no matter who you were. It was to preserve that. The Bible is that answer in there.
The other thing that I just can't get people to grasp, or they just reject it because there's reward in rejecting this kind of truth. But between the Constitution and Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence, these were flawed men that knew they were involved in a system of slavery that needed to be uprooted. And the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were written to uproot slavery. And it's like me. I'll come up with a game plan and draw out of something to help me lose weight. And maybe I don't follow all the way through, but I wrote a great game plan that will work if I stick to it. And they wrote a great game plan for a country to end slavery and to put in place where it could keep improving and get better and better and be the most opportunity-rich place on the planet for everybody. We got to give them the credit, and we have to understand that every man, woman, and child is flawed, but if they submit to God, Jesus Christ, even just for a brief moment, they're capable of building a 917 society off a chef's salary and driving Uber on the side.
Driving Uber, yeah. Well, you were talking about miracles, and a lot of people don't know about the history when George Washington was inaugurated. It was April 30th of 1789. He took his administration, it was in New York, because the capital was in New York then, and they walked down to St. Paul's Chapel. It was attached to Trinity Church, and they walked down there, and he got on his knees, and he dedicated this country to God. And that's very well documented. Even though people want to say, oh, that's not real. But yes, it's well documented. They even have a pew there where his family and he sat. Well, fast forward to 2001, September 11th. And another miracle happened in this country. When the Twin Towers fell, and most of us that were here on the planet and saw the films and saw the destruction, and
I was just 2 or 3 years old at this time. But go ahead.
and saw the devastation, and you saw that smoke billowing for blocks and blocks and blocks. Well, St. Paul's Chapel is in the shadow of the World Trade Center, and not a single glass was broken, not a single brick, nothing was hurt in that chapel. And they call it the miracle of St. Paul's Chapel. And I think that's something that, we need to share more of, because our young people need to know these stories. They're real stories that happen. And I think it's important for our kids to know these things. That's real history. That's real history.
Guys, I really appreciate you guys coming by and sharing the story. And I want to share with our audience that we, Fearless and Roll Call, we're going to partner with the 917 Society and try to shine our light on them, and they're going to help shine their light on us. And we're going to make them part of the Friday night VIP event with Tucker. We're going to hand out constitutions. We're going to efforting to auction off some items and to support you guys.
That's wonderful.
But, I want to send our audience to them, and they're going to reciprocate by sending their audience to us, because there's just so much synergy in what we're doing. We're Fearless is trying to raise up masculine, biblically sound men to stand our ground. Let's quit apologizing for America's past. And again, it's not that we didn't make any mistakes in America, but we're pretty good with apologies. We've made some real sacrifices for progress in this country, and a lot of people gave their lives for all of us to have freedom.
Absolutely.
And it's I'm big on, and I don't think I'm going to offend Joni, but I'm really big on just telling men we got to quit apologizing. That somehow our history is so dastardly towards women that we owe them, and we need to back off leadership and all that, and we actually need to be doing the reverse.
And we need strong male leaders.
Yes.
We absolutely do.
And because we've fallen down, Joni's had to pick us up and sacrifice her whole life to educating young people on, really, it's our responsibility. And it's like Roger talking about his grandkids and great-grandkids, and I think my audience knows it, and Roger certainly knows it now, as wise as he is. We got to educate our own kids. We can't rely on the school system.
That's right.
They're going to brainwash them the wrong direction. Sure. They have no respect for this Constitution. They're telling the kids, well, there was no transgender people that helped write the Constitution. How could it be fair? But we got to take the responsibility. And
right.
And Joni's doing it, and it's an embarrassment to us men that she's out there doing more than us, but we're going to step up.
Well, I'm so thankful we have so many wonderful people, because, I don't like to be in the spotlight by any means, but I have to, because I have to share the project. And we've had a lot of censorship with starting in 2020, anything you tried to do with the Constitution, with America, with the flag, you would get censored. And we're still experiencing some of that. I don't know if you are, but we have a hard time getting the message out. But I'm just so grateful for every single person that joins us, whether they're a volunteer, whether they're a donor. It's all of us working together. It truly is we, the people. And something that John Jay, the man who inspired me, used to always say, he said, the people are sovereign. The people are sovereign in our Constitution, not the government. And, you know, that's something that I think we forget, you know, and it's really important that they represent our voice and our speech. You know, God spoke. When God created this world, he spoke. The spoken word is so important. The Bible teaches us that the words that come out of our mouth are so important. And when our speech started to be censored, that really was upsetting to me, because our speech is crucial to our walk with God, what we say. And so it's important for us to speak truth, which is what you're doing. And it's what we're trying to do.
The truth is the silencing of Jesus Christ, period, in the story. That they're not after us, they're after him and his truth. And they don't want anybody to speak it out loud and to speak it in a way that it influences young people. Joni, you're a blessing. You're a miracle.
She is.
Thank you guys for supporting her the way that you have.
Couldn't do it without them.
and we look forward to working with you through roll call and in any way possible moving forward. You guys are awesome. Kevin, thank you for the introduction, and thank you guys for coming by my house and sharing your story.
Thank you.
I'll offer you a little food, something to drink, and no rush to leave. But and thank you guys. That's it, and that's all for us today. We'll see you next time.